Hey guys, Ron from Wild Betta Fish USA. Happy Saturday. And now happy first day of spring after this winter we just had in the East Coast. And to my friends in Texas, it's been a pretty rough one. It's nice to see possibly we can get it behind us in the next couple weeks. We should be free and clear. But let's talk about something upbeat, which is my wild bettas. I've been keeping wild bettas for a long time now. I don't want to count back the years. Started as a neophyte in this hobby and gained experience through trial and error. I would not consider myself an expert by any stretch of the imagination, but I do have quite a bit of experience in maintaining fish from both the Una maculata complex and the Betta coxina complex. Both of those complexes are my favorites to maintain. What you're currently looking at is my Betta Rudolin setup. This particular setup is a 29-gallon tank, set up paludarium style. I like to maintain a humid level of air in all my wild Betta setups, but especially with these type of fish. I love the look of a riparium / paludarium type setup where you have that humid layer of air trapped inside the aquarium with a glass top, maintaining a water temperature anywhere between 72 to 76 degrees Fahrenheit. I like to use cultured, meaning sand that has been inoculated with bacteria, beneficial bacteria. I like to mix that sand with some light gravel and leaves, crushed up leaves. Recently, I experimented with adding different types of, let's say, peat moss, organic peat that I purchased from a trusted hardware store. As a matter of fact, the company is a customer of mine on my route where I drive and deliver product to this company, Espumona, and they're in Millville, New Jersey. So Espumona produces a product called organic peat moss. So I took that product and I boiled it in water to take some of the tannins out, but also to saturate it so it would sink. And I mixed that with sand, and I put that in a tank that I'm growing out a marvelous pair of Betta Antuta from Frog and Carla. For those of you who know me, I recently lost Frog after almost 6 years in captivity. It was a sad moment. As a matter of fact, I was with him, and not to be dramatic about it, but I was with him actually the moment he passed. Carla had passed a month before him, and Frog hung on, but just wasn't his normal self and succumbed to age. 6 years in captivity for Betta Una maculata complex, as far as I know, is not an easy feat. These fish in captivity can probably live double their life expectancy in the wild. They're very easy prey for a lot of things, from other fish to birds and even to reptiles that are found in Indonesia and Malaysia. For the most part, Frog's life was very important to us. He was my ambassador of my YouTube channel. I have a t-shirt with Frog on it. And he was the fish that, in my opinion, always sparked and kept my passion for the hobby going. I've kept lots of wild bettas from the Una maculata complex, but I never had a fish as interesting and as cool as Frog was. He was also an amazing father. He fathered quite a bit of fry for us. I was able to spread those fry around to friends and customers when I was actually selling wild bettas. But I have a pair from Frog and Carla that I'm currently growing out, and a young male that looks a lot like his dad. So I'll shoot a video of those guys later on down the line. But let's talk about, as I'm rambling on, I'm sorry, but let's talk about the beta Coxina complex setup I have currently in this video. So this tank holds a colony of beta rudolins, and they seem to love this type of setup and spawn frequently in this type of setup. They do not prey on their fry that often, and in a tank this size, it's very easy for a lot of the fry to develop, find beneficial invertebrates and copiopods that they can pick on. I don't directly feed a lot of the fry in this tank, and yet I have generations of fry that pop up and are growing out, and I have fish from last year that are probably have already spawned, and some of their fry are growing out in this tank, and it's proven to be a pretty cool combination for longevity and actually spawning the species. In this tank, I like to use pothos, java fern, lots of driftwood, and in the far right hand corner, I instead of having the spray bar turned against the glass like I did when I first set up this tank, I decided to let it run down the driftwood, sort of like a small mini waterfall. The fish in this tank do not really like a lot of turbulent water, and in this setup, as you could tell, it's pretty still. So I found convenient ways to discharge the water from the Eheim canister filter. That is the main filter for this tank, a very large Eheim canister filter, I should say, probably, as far as I'm concerned, 10 or maybe even 20 times the volume of this tank. But I'm able to actually keep the water flow pretty slow by running it down the driftwood and having it spill back in the system. I do also have a Eheim surface extractor, the Eheim sort of skimmer, and it's in the left corner. You can't see it because I usually try to keep that stuff hidden, but it does a very good job of exporting some of the surface slime that would typically form in a tank that has a very humid layer of air in it and a glass top. The air exchange, the gas exchange, I should say, could probably be a little better in this type of setup, but then you wouldn't have that humidity that these fish, as they're developing from fry to adult, the humidity is very important for them to develop, all of their organs, including the labyrinth organ that they need to actually breathe and take a gulp of air. So for the most part, the surface skimmer does a great job of removing any of the surface proteins. So when you get a closer look at the surface of this tank, the water is pretty clear, pretty crisp, I should say pristine of any organics sitting up top. And what I typically do is I take the sponge from that little Eheim surface skimmer twice a week, and I rinse it off in a bucket with dechlorinated water, and just place it back. So this tank gets filtered pretty well compared to a lot of the wild betta setups I've had in the past, where I would use just sponge filters and lots of water changes. This tank gets a water change pretty much only once a month. I try to leave the fish alone. I'm always concerned about when I'm doing a water change and I'm taking a lot of fry out or harming the fry. So what I like to do is keep the water changes to a minimum. The pH in this tank is rather low. It can be anywhere between 4.5 to 5.0. That's pretty low, but it's not too low for these fish. It is proven for me that it keeps these fish spawning, and a lot of their colors, which you're not really going to see. These fish are very secretive, but a lot of their colors are that dark, rich maroon that the rudolins are known for. And I also have a few of them in here that are developing that bluish square box that I have posted on my Instagram, that I'm hoping becomes a trait that these rudolins throw and start to pass down to their other generations. So for the sake of this video being a long one, approaching 10 minutes, this is typical of the wild betta setups I have set up for all the years I've been maintaining the species. And this is this type of setup that I think would benefit you if you're trying to reproduce wild bettas. So stay tuned for more videos. Like and subscribe. Any questions or any comments, please leave them down below. Thanks, guys. Ron from Wild Better Fish USA. See you.